Hi everybody, welcome back to the Desma Works channel and back on with the engine build for the Ducati ST2, and we are going to be doing some of the work towards the top end. Apologies for the lateness of this video, but I was on holiday last week, so not much time to work on the engine, although I have managed to have a little bit of a tidy up in the garage one evening. So the bottom end of the engine is on the bench, ready to go for when we can finish the top end and then hopefully start dropping the frame on. But we're starting to make progress in putting this bike back together, which is absolutely fantastic. So what are we going to be doing today? Okay, so today I've got all of the parts required to put the top end back together for the engine. So I've got the lovely newly powder coated heads, cylinders, the valve covers. I've still got a little bit of work to do. I've managed to clean the internals, so I just used paint stripper and then wire brushes just to get rid of the powder coat in there, and it's not come up too bad. I just need to sand the faces down on the flange for the joint so that I can get a good metal to metal contact, although there is a gasket in there, so it's not the end of the world. But as you can see, it didn't come up too bad. Likewise, it's got rid of, there's the odd little bit, but the main piece is it's got rid of all the excess powder coat, so it takes away the risk. I've just got to clean the top of the pistons. As I said, I think in a previous video, I'm using the original piston rings because both the bores and the pistons are in good condition. I will just do a light glaze break with a cylinder honing tool just to make sure that they've got a little bit of extra bite in there. I've still got a few little odds and sods to clean up, so I won't be putting on that temperature monitor there and this one here on the vertical, but I will be putting everything back in. And I've got a collection of bolts that need to be plated still that have come out from these, so likewise I won't be sticking the cylinder hose connections on just because I want to get those painted up, and there's a few bolts in there that I need to do. Likewise I need to plate that. Let's put that in the pile of stuff to be plated. Okay, so first things first, I just put that here and just lift that off. You'll see that we've not got any of the bearings in to support the camshafts, either in the head itself or in the side cover. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab those out of the drawer, and first job is we will put the bearings into the heads. Let's do that then. Okay, I've just dug out the 2 seals that we need and the 3 bearings that go in each part of the head. So you've got a bearing here, bearing here, bearing here, then the seal. What I'll do is I'll list in the description below the bearing and seal numbers, so that if you want to source them direct yourself rather than paying the OEM prices, you'll be able to sort that out. Okay, so first things first, what am I going to do? What I'm going to do is just push all one head to the side, and then we'll work on one of these. So the first thing I want to do is I just want to clean up the valve seats and valves and guides. So I'll lap those valves in and we'll be good to go. Okay, let's get on with this then. Okay, because it was vapor blasted, there's a little bit of light surface rust that comes off your fingers, but I'm just going to run a little cleaning brush through with a little bit of oil on, just to make sure that we clean out any light surface rust, because that will act as a grinding paste effectively once we start putting the valves back in. So let's clean that out quickly. So that's just a nylon pipe brush. It's not abrasive at all, but as you can see, it's just picked up all the dirt from inside the valve guide. And then I'll just put a little bit of oil on the outside of the valve guide, and then very gently with the Scotch Brite pad just clean that up. There we go, that's just got rid of any light surface corrosion. So we've got a good clean valve guide. Inlet valve. No play in that, which is nice to see. Exhaust. Again, no play in that. So if you remember, we had really good heads there. What I'm going to do is just clean off a bit of this carbon quickly. Okay, so a little bit of lapping compound. For the intake, I'm going straight for fine. I'll try fine on the exhaust. We'll see how that beds in. Give that twizzle. Problem is these heads don't have a flat surface. Makes it a bit fun. Right, that's got a nice face going all the way around. And a corresponding matching clean face on the valve seat. So intake is done quite easily. Let's do the exhaust. Actually, what I might do is just take that intake out because it's a little bit more work needed on the exhaust. It's polished up quite nicely, but there's some little carbon marks that show that you need to just take a little bit more off. That's better. Polished face all the way around. Same in the valve seat, nice even track all the way around. Let me just clean it up properly. Okay, so we've lapped in the valves. What we'll do now is we'll push the bearings in. So we have a 6004 C3, which will be going into this valve seat here. There's one. We have a 6202 RSH C3. That means it has a blind cover on one side, or a fully enclosed one, and open on the other, and that will be going into the cam cap. Then we have a 6003 C3, which will be going in here. Last but not least, B1B ASLRS 22 by 35 by 7 seal, which will also be going in the end. Okay, just going to quickly stick the three bearings in the freezer just to cool them back a bit. First bearing into there. Okay, first one's in, pushes up to a seat in just inside. You can see just nice and flush. Okay. Next off, I'm going to do the end cap bearing, and that's because when the next bearing goes in, I need to get a sleeve in between it and the outer bearing, so I want to have the camshaft in to do that one. Okay, let's just heat that up quickly. shielded face outwards. There we go. And that's where the back end of the cam will sit. There you go, that inner sleeve is now aligned. What happens on that last tap, it just jumped ever so slightly. But you'll notice you've got a slight radius there, so if you're careful you can just tap it back straight. So that's all our bearings in. All I've got to do is just tap in the last seal, which will be going here. Okay, seal, which is a little collar that will sit there once the camshaft is in. Okay, I'm just going to put a bit of rubber grease around there. Okay, now the bearings are in, the next job will be fit in all of our followers. Okay, let's get this head together then. So first off, what we're going to do is get the closing rockers in, and then we'll stick the valves in and get the closing shim put on. So we've currently got the exhaust side here, so get the exhaust one. Now there's 2 spaces on each side, so just make sure you have them in the right spot. And then looking at the pin, there's a dead end side and the extractor side. Make sure you stick the extractor side in so you can pull it back out. I'm just going to do, stick one of these on. So making sure that you put the spring on the flat. And then the final spacer. Stick it up. Personally, I don't like the tool. Get your half rings. Let's put the opener in. Two washers or shims. If I was finishing this, I'd stick this clip in here now, but as I've got to do the shims, I'm just going to leave that off. Spin it round. So just do the intake side. Oh, actually, I'll getting ahead of myself here. Again, make sure you get the correct end in first. Went a little bit too far. There we go. Get the other spacer in. Oh. There we go. Okay, valve now goes in. Okay, put the camshaft back in, which each of its washers on. Okay, so let's take some shim measurements, clearances, sorry. So we're on the intake side, it's loose. 0.1, 0.15, Oh, sorry, there's another one behind there. Naughty, naughty. So 0.15. Let's do the loaded. So we need 0.25 here. 0.15. 0.2. 0.25. 0.3 doesn't go. So we've got 0.15 opening clearance and 0.25 loaded closing clearance, which is 0.1. So 0.15 for opener shim, 0.1 for the closing shim. So closing shim's in spec. We need to close up the opening shim by 0.05. Okay, it's loose, so .1, 0.15, 0.2 won't go in. Oh, we can't get a 0.2 in there even loaded. Just make sure I've got that right down. Yeah, there's definitely clearance. 0.1, 0.15. Okay, so we've got 0 clearance on the closing shim. So we've got an issue with the closing shim on this side. Just make sure that that shim is definitely closed. Let's put it back in the center place. 0.1, 0.15, no. Force down on the arm, definitely doesn't go in. Just make sure it's definitely loose. Yeah. Okay, let's strip the head apart and find out what shim sizes we've got. Okay, let's measure these. Okay, so intake opening shim 4.35, exhaust opening shim 5mm, the closing shim's out. So a little measurement tool in there. So this gives us a measurement of 8 point. This tool here is 8.9 millimeters. So we've got 15.9, which means we need, that's a 7mm. Just stick that in there. And we've got a 15.7. So that's a 6.8mm shim. So I'm not using my software at the moment because my keyboard has died, so I'm just taking the readings down, and I'll do it the old-fashioned mathematical way. So our intake needs to close up by 5/100ths, so we just need to take out the intake to a 4.4mm. Our loaded clearance was 0.25, which means we've actually got a 0.1 clearance on the closer on the intake, which is good, so 7mm stays as is. Our exhaust opener was okay, so it's measured at 5, needs to stay at 5. But we had a 0.15 loaded clearance measurement, which means that we have 0 clearance on the closer, and it's reading 6.8, so I need to go to at least 6.7. The second hassle I've got now my largest opening shims on my collection of 8 valve shims is 3.85 for the openers. My closers go up to 6.45, so I'm going to have to order some shims in, which is a bit of hassle. Ho 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 hum. Okay. So that's as far as I can get with that head at the moment. Hi everybody, welcome back. So what feels like a few seconds for you in the video is eight days for me. The replacement shims came in, so all good, bar one, and I'll explain why. So I managed to find my old keyboard, so my computer's now working. When I did the exhaust opener reading, I miscalculated and I added instead of subtracted the loaded gap reading, which meant I thought I needed a 4.95 shim, which I've got. I actually needed a 5.05 shim, so my bad, but not going to stop me today, because the beauty of the opening shims is I can do that very quickly by just taking the cover off and changing it out. So I'm going to proceed with today. It is at the service limit anyway of 0.15, so even if I forgot to do it, it's not the end of the world, but I want to get it back in spec. So the verticals are bob on, so we've got 0.1 and 0.1 on both the openers and unloaded gap, that is, and then 0.15 and 0.15 on the loaded gap, which has given us a 0.1 clearance on the openers and a 0.05 clearance on the closers. I think I might have stated earlier in the video that I was aiming for 0.1 across everything and 0.15 on the exhaust opener. Apologies, I was looking at the 4 valve sheet at the time, so the readings you're aiming for 0.1 on both openers, 0.05 on both closers for the clearances, so absolutely bob on there. I am marginally out on the exhaust opener on the horizontal cylinder, but I've got 0.1, 0.05 on the intake side, 0.15 and 0.05 on the exhaust closer side. So from a clearances point of view, I'm all there apart from one shim, which I'm going to order up, but I'm not going to stop that for me putting the rest of this together today, because I want to get this video out, as it's it's over 2 weeks now since I got the last video out. So although it's built up, I've got one little job left to do in here. So you'll see that I have not got the valve seals in place at the moment. So what I need to do is just quickly pop out the shims and the valves, and then just put in those seals so that we can close all this up, put the clips back in and lock everything down. Let's do that. So if you get this kit, the black ones are the exhaust. Okay, so when it's in, just want to make sure it's fully seated all the way around. So just using your finger and just work it so you're comfortable it's definitely on. Push the valve back through. Actually first finally assembling it. Let's just make sure it's got oil on it. If you've installed it correctly, when you push it through, it shouldn't lift off. Alright, so I'm just going to stick the intake, the closing shim back on this side to hold that valve in place. Okay, so that's the exhaust one on. Let's quickly do the inlet one, which comes as the green ones. Same again, just got a lip that you've got to get over. Okay, same again. Once it's in, just check it's fully seated and that you can't see any gaps. You can't see, but what I'm looking at from the back end here is I can see the rear of the seal, and I was just making sure it's not lifted. So once you're comfortable that that's fully in place, you can just, the test is just grab your thumbnail and just make sure it's definitely located over the edge. Try not to use anything like a sharp implement. You'll see I pulled it with this, but that's angled away and it's quite blunt as well, so I was only just using that to pull it to the edge. So that's that one in. Let's get the valve back in. Okay, so valve seal for the intake is in, and for the exhaust. So let's just reassemble this head now. So cam goes in next. Just going to put a bit of oil on the lobes. Okay, there's two little shims here. You just make out there's one there, one there. Sorry, let's pull that down so you can see better. There's two shims, one there, one there. You're going to take this clip and lock that in. That stops your opening rocker from moving. Same on the other side. Shim there, shim there. Just squeeze that in. Okay, going over to the gasket kit. You've got two paper gaskets in there for the cam cover. I'm just going to put that over. Come around to this side. Oh, what I'll do first, charge up the cam with some oil. Newton-meters. Intake cover gaskets. Oh, sorry, the valve cover gaskets. Get it right, Adam. Right, the exhaust opener side is the one where I just need to replace that shim when it turns up, another one. So I'm just going to stick this cover on loosely, and you'll see I've managed to clean out the powder coat, so we're all good on that front. So I'm literally only going to just stick this on very loosely. I'm only going to do 2 bolts because that reminds me I've got to do something inside there. Right, over onto the other side, so I can do this one up properly. Again, the cover's all cleaned inside, so there's no powder coat in it. Again, 10 Newton meters. So that's that head ready to go with obviously that cover loose. So let's just move on to the next one. So I'm going to do this one off camera, but it's going to be the same job. So I'm going to get the valve seals into place, put the valves in, and this head can be all fully bolted up because all the clearances are correct in here. So just let me do that off camera quickly. Head's done. New piece of zinc plated tank bracket support and cable stay guide for the vertical head is back on there as well. That head's fully done. If you remember, I've got to get a new opening shim into the horizontal exhaust opener. I need to close that gap up by 500 thou, so that's left to go, so it's loose. Next job, I'm just going to put a little bit of a glaze brake hone into their barrels. As you remember, we had no issues with smoking. The piston rings are still good. Did all the gap measurements and clearances, so they're fine. So what I'm just going to do, get a honing tool, buzz them inside there, just put a little bit of a hatch back in, then we'll put the pistons back in, and then we'll go for an install on the bike, an install on the bottom end and get the top end reattached. Okay, let me just grab the honing tool and let's do the the horizontal first. So it's just put an extra bit of hatch back on, just help the piston rings bed back in again. Let me do this one and then we'll come back when I'm just going to put the pistons in. Okay, time to fit the piston back in. So this is all being cleaned off with degreaser, so what I need to do is oil up the piston rings. Work that round. You also want to check that you're not getting any resistance as you spin those round, which I'm not, so all good on that front. Right, need to offset these all by 90 degrees to one another. Well, sorry, 120 degrees to one another. So if there's an opening there, opening here, an opening there. Okay. Little oil on the side of the skirt. Piston ring compressor. A little bit of oil in the barrels. And tap it in. And push to the bottom. So that's the horizontal one done. Let me do the vertical and I'll come back. Both barrels are ready to go, along with the heads. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fit the vertical one first and take you through that, and then I'll do the horizontal one off camera. So first things first, what we need to do is we need to put the gasket. Oh, actually I might need to just clean that off. There's a bit of debris there. Let me just clean that off quickly first. First job is to get some free bond on around it. and then top inlet must face up on the inlet side, which is facing forward on the engine. And some more free bond on the top of the seal. There's a seal that goes in there, so I've just put that in place. Okay, let's now lower down the just clean off the excess free bond that's touched the. Let's lower the barrel on and get the piston connected via its piston pin into the com rod. Piston pin circlip. Oil pin. Okay, so getting ready to put the head on. Got some black Vitron seals there, some green Vitron seals, and one around the oil feed as well. So let's go ahead and drop the. Oh, go ahead. Let's go and drop the head on, and we're good to tighten. Okay, head bolts need to be done up in 3 stages: 10 newton meters, 30 newton meters, and then finally 38.5 newton meters. I'm going to keep it at right angles so that it remains an accurate measure. You can extend it, but you're multiplying the torque factor, so you'd have to drop by the percentage difference. There is a calculation, as I've said before, but the easiest way is just to go right angle. So that's 10 up to 30 now. And then last torque setting, 38.5. So I'm just going to go a smidge under 40 on here. Okay, and that's the vertical head installed. So lovely shiny new head bolts and the bits of plating that I've done, looking quite nice. Likewise around there, it might be a bit shiny because of the sun. There we go. Right, I'm just going to do the horizontal off camera and I'll come back to you when I'm finished. There we have it. The horizontal head is now on and the engine is starting to look even more complete. So I think this is going to be where I'm going to leave this video. This is pretty much where I'd hope to get to. In the next video we will get all of the belt hardware on and go for fitting the belts and the belt covers, and that will seal up this side of the engine. Hopefully by that time I'll have sorted out the last shim that I needed for there, but I think you'll agree it's looking really good. I'm really impressed with that. Leo. Good move. Okay, so that's it for this video. Apologies for the time that it's taken to get out, and apologies for the error in suggested clearances. So just to be clear, what we should be having in is any of the openers is 0.1mm clearance and 0.05mm for the closing clearances, irrespective of whether it's intake and exhaust. My bad. I wasn't paying attention to the sheet I had open, and at the start of the video I gave you the readings that would have been used on a 4-valve engine, but all sorted, hopefully. I'll make sure I put that in the comments as well. Sorry, not in the comments. I'll make sure I put that in the description of the video as well, so you've got it for reference point for any future work that you might do yourself. Okay, so hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, chuck us a like. If you've got any questions or comments, stick them down below. And if you're not a subscriber, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell for plenty more content to come. Next video, we will be back on to putting the belts on, and that will hopefully almost be the engine finished. See you in the next video then. Cheers. Bye.